Back on Steel and Vance, and we got to roll this video because it has been 1 year since this happened, Linda.
Can you believe it?
And honestly, this is one of the first instances that I turned down an assignment based on the temperature, the attitude, the vitriol, the danger associated with this gathering.
I sat on my couch and I was glued to the live coverage because I couldn't believe it. It was like tribalism.
Yeah.
You know, you either believe something is black, you believe something is white. The anger, the frustration, the, attacks on media, on government, talking of overthrowing government. It was so crazy. And it all fit in, to my thinking, to this whole sort of sense of misinformation, that you could not have a conversation with someone in your family or a coworker who was on that side of the fence and you're on this side, because never the twain shall meet. Their set of facts did not merge with yours.
And even if you were watching that and upset at the upside down Canadian flag or the swears on flags towards our prime minister, and people saying it's a right to peacefully protest, that didn't feel like a peaceful protest. My even just saying that, I know, will stir up the ire of somebody who wants to tell me what I can and cannot say while yelling freedom. The disinformation train, the rhetoric, the negativity, we got a lot to get to here, but specifically the disinformation, I think, is our point here.
There was a report that came out. I just want to show you the headline. And it was astonishing. The number of fake news stories about COVID in particular contributed, they believe, to about 2,800 deaths in Canada and about 300 million in hospital costs because people said, oh, I don't need to be vaccinated. And just the myriad of myths around what the COVID vaccination did, whether you needed it, it would make you sick, all the various fake-ola cures. It just, it was something that we thought we needed to talk about because 3 years later, we're still talking about COVID and people are still dying.
And people miss the memo on how the anti-vax rhetoric in particular, you mentioned that with the death toll and the cost to our healthcare system, that can be drawn directly back to unvaccinated people. And the anti-vax movement makes a fortune on the backs of fear. And debunking the myths surrounding this is such a huge part of it. And understanding the nature of how this isn't new. This isn't something that can't be seen in other episodes of pandemics or epidemics of any kind. And that's why we wanted to bring in our next guest, Jason Tetro.
Jason is someone you might be familiar with. He does a lot of media. He's a microbiologist. He has a very popular podcast. He is an author. Jason Tetro joining us now. Jason, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it's wonderful to be back in 1885 again.
Right? Let me start by asking you this. What role do you think social media played in this misinformation at the scale that we saw it around COVID, around the trucker convoy?
Well, I think that's one of the differences between the mass protests in 1885 that sort of began this whole idea of the anti-vaccine movement. It was in Leicester in the UK. Google it. And what we saw more recently in the last year is the ability of social media to increase the temperature and start expanding on the number of people who are going to be listening in and paying attention. And one of the big problems that we face all the time is whenever there's a fear component, whenever people are like, we don't know what's going on, or we're not sure whether or not we should trust anyone. This was actually something I wrote about in my first book, The Germ Code. It comes down to a matter of, well, who am I going to believe? And a lot of people prefer to believe themselves over the administration and experts like myself who essentially are talking about the science. And this is where we start running into these problems, because if I'm a rugged individual and I said, you can't tell me what to do, well, that's one thing. But then if I start posting this on social media and someone grabs it and starts spreading it, well, then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of other people going, yeah, I don't want to be told what to do either. And before you know it, you have a convoy on Wellington Street in Ottawa.
We were just showing some footage of an anti-vax protest while you were explaining that, and how this is not unique to this era of COVID-19. Can you touch a little bit on that piece of this puzzle when people want to point directly? It's an mRNA, it's a vaccine that's unproven. That one in particular, I know, with billions and billions of shots in arms at this point, the safety around these vaccines is indisputable, is it not, from the scientific perspective? Start there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So first off, the mRNA vaccine is actually based on RNA and mRNA therapies that have actually been FDA approved. So that was one of the reasons why getting this fast track was actually not a problem. Secondly, it's one of the most fascinating things is that when you start talking about genetic material being used, people all of a sudden start throwing terms such as eugenics and cloning and mass mutation. But at the end of the day, the reason it's mRNA is because mRNA has nothing to do with the actual genetic code inside of your cells. It literally stays on the outside and says, hi, I'd like to produce this protein, and has to ask for permission to do it. And if the cell says yes, well, then it starts to produce that spike protein. But if the cell says no, well, then the mRNA just gets chewed up and it goes away. The problem, of course, is that a lot of people don't remember grade 9 biology. And quite honestly, if you go back to grade 9 and you look at the cell, you'll see the difference between what a DNA is, what an mRNA is, and you'll actually start to realize that even high school students can get it. And so now, why are these other people not getting it? Well, that comes back to that rugged individualism. Because if I tell you that an mRNA vaccine is safe and that you should be taking it, you're going to say, oh, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, and you know what, Jason, I can understand that we were all scared in the beginning and we didn't know, and it did seem that this vaccine came up quickly, even though that wasn't the case. It had been used and in research and being modified. But here's the thing I don't get. It's one thing for the average person who doesn't have a scientific background or a healthcare background to go, I'm confused, I'm not sure. But what is it with all the health professionals, the nurses, paramedics in some cases, naturopaths, chiropractors? There's this whole cohort of healthcare workers who are like, no way, won't get vaccinated, would rather get fired. I don't get that.
It really comes down to that human nature, if you will, of trying to be independent. And what's really fascinating is that a lot of these professions that are involved in health and healthcare, you have to be very independent of what you do. I mean, if you walk through a hospital, you'll actually see each and every single person. Yes, they're part of a team. You know, they're wearing their scrubs and they're doing this, but they have to be independent and they have to rely on themselves above everything else in order to function properly. That can sometimes come at odds when you have individuals who are telling you what to do. And if you happen to be looking at literature that isn't necessarily properly vetted, or you're looking at individuals who are making money off of misinformation and disinformation, but use really good scientific terminologies to do it, well, then what ends up happening is they start believing that. It really comes down to the same idea of I did my own research. And when people do that, I simply say to them, okay, well, please explain to me that research, knowing full well that for the last 30 to 35 years, I've been involved in doing this research.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm able.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Jason,
30,
I
35
interrupted
years.
you there. You have been doing this, and you've done the timeline of a pandemic. You've reiterated with your microbiologist with a specialty in emerging pathogens, which are things like COVID-19. So this is literally what you do. So your ability to bring that knowledge to the anti-vaxxers who attack you on social media, why is it, further to Linda's question, why is it that scientists are being attacked in the way that we see yourself, Professor Hotez, Peter Hotez from Texas Children's Hospital, who literally created a vaccine and then gave up the patent. He makes nothing, and people still come at him and say, "You're big pharma." Is this all back to that same small slice of society that has attitude?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Because at the end of the day, when you realize that the best answer happens to be getting a vaccine, and then you realize that if you do get the vaccine, well, your friends are going to say you've caved in to the big pharma, then you're just essentially going to start saying stuff like that. I find that when people attack me in social media, they don't do it for very long because, well, as you know, Jody, I don't get very angry at them. What I start doing is I start throwing all facts at them, and I start throwing them all the information that they need. And before they know it, they're actually having a conversation with me and realizing, oh, this actually is the best suggestion. And then someone will send them a message, and then they'll be like, oh no, you're big pharma. And it's like, well, wait a sec, what happened there, man? Just like,
you know what? Here's another thing that I don't get. You have people who are saying, I don't trust that vaccine. It's killing people. They're suddenly dropping dead everywhere. But wait a second. Are you saying that I could drink bleach or I could take ivermectin, a horse tranquilizer? That sounds like a good idea. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And again, it's because you have individuals. See, let's put it this way. Ivermectin and a number of these others have scientific backers, if you will, okay? Right. Because there's maybe one little pathway that could possibly lead to the reduction of COVID-19 replication in a cell line by about 10%. And then what happens is that gets magnified. Mm-hmm. And then when that gets magnified, people start thinking, well, this is the cure. This is what we should be doing. Unfortunately, they don't have enough of the scientific literacy to be able to understand that 10% of a reduction of COVID-19 replication in your cells still means severe disease.
Right.
And so this is where it becomes a problem.
With the place that we're at in Canada, in terms of COVID-19. And I think this is really important with so many consuming news south of the border where vaccine uptake has not been as robust as it has been in Canada. And even with the trucker convoy or the anti-vax community being very loud on social media, it is true, is it not, Jason, that the mass majority of Canadians have rolled up their sleeves and we are better off for it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing this all over the world, that the uptake of the vaccine is quite high. The problem, of course, happens to be access to the vaccine. And this is one of the things that I always find fascinating is, you know, we've heard about this XBB 1.5 and oh my gosh, it's the horrible one. It's the Kraken, right? Yeah. But actually, if you got the 4-5 booster that came out just a couple of months ago, then you have some cross protection and you probably won't get disease. Yeah, but nobody understands that because, oh my goodness, the vaccine is bad.
It feels like, I was saying earlier, this tribalism, you know, you think this, I think that. Some of us are more than happy to roll up the sleeve. I can hardly wait to get the next one. And others are saying, no way, I'm not going to get it at all. And then there's some in the middle saying, I had 2. Do I really need 3 or 4? Bottom line is COVID's not done. I mean, the World Health Organization has just come out with some pretty alarming numbers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we are seeing the number of cases reduce over time. And I've got a few numbers here. We saw a 78% reduction in cases over the last month, which is absolutely fantastic month to month. I mean, you're like, oh my goodness, we're getting out of this. Until you realize that there's also been a 65% increase in the number of deaths.
Wow. Wow.
And so what's happening is that we're seeing inequity both on the age scale, and this is something we've talked about in Vancouver for a long time. Do you remember back in 2020, there was the Halloween on Granville Street?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, all these people started coming down with COVID, and we started losing all sorts of our elderly population because of intergenerational homes. Same idea. But now we have this inequality as a result of the people who are choosing not to get vaccinated and getting severe disease, or getting sick and passing that severe disease on, essentially by infecting someone who's older and may not have the immune system to be able to counter the virus. This is where we are right now. What's going to happen is you're going to start to see a leveling off. And then it's going to come to be very similar to the flu, where we have to get the flu vaccine every year, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
We have to have Jason back. We got to have you. You got to come back. Please come back.
We will. Jason, thank you so much for your big brain and your insights. We appreciate it, and we'll talk again. Thanks, Jason.
Hey, it's not a problem. Take care.
Jason Tetro is a podcaster of the Super Awesome Science Show. He's a microbiologist. He's a specialist in things like COVID. So listen to what he has to say.
Follow him on Twitter, and you can find his DMs there as well as email address, and he always responds to your questions. Yeah. Now, Don't miss tonight's What the Hell segment. It features an absolute eye roller from a major U.S. cable personality known for his distraction tactics. This time, he's pushing buttons about our country.
Yeah, you can probably guess who it is. But coming up next on Steel and Vance, did you brush your teeth today, Jody?
Yes, I did.
Did you brush your dog's teeth today?
No, I didn't.
Because oral hygiene is just as important for your pet, and we're going to tell you why when we come back.